Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the 6th part of What If RWBY and Weiss Were Childhood Friends. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 11, A Somewhat Normal Life. They currently sat together in a booth at some burger joint when, "This is heresy," Coco says seriously, earning all of their attention. It's been roughly almost 2 months since they've started going to school again. All was well and good in her opinion. Classes were easy for her and she got to spend time with Weiss every day. If RWBY was being honest, it was the dream. She had 2 subjects with the white-haired girl, AP Chemistry and AP Calculus, where they always sat next to each other. After school they'd sometimes go to Weiss and Blake's apartment because it was the nearest. More often than not she would probably cook dinner for the group as they studied and did homework, and on times when there were no school work to be done, she would spend it cuddled with Weiss on their couch watching a D-grade comedy movie, earning annoyed groans from the white-haired girl and obnoxious laughter from her. Her new friends were great too, she got along with everyone and finally, just kind of felt like a normal kid. She hasn't gotten around to asking Weiss out though on those dates she promised though. Every time she'd get a perfect moment to ask, she'd either lose her nerves or something comes along the way that just ruins her momentum. But RWBY was sure Weiss didn't mind. When it was just the 2 of them the girl was very forward, to say the least. Always inching closer and closer until swerving right at the last moment, kissing her somewhere else like her neck, her collarbones, her ears, or as the white-haired girl says, it was punishment for not kissing her on the initial night they saw each other. It was blissful torture, driving her crazy every time. Really, and other than her cowardice in asking the girl of her dreams out, life was perfect. So, what was Coco on about? "I can tell you're all lost, so I'll expand," the girl says before standing up and slamming her table. "You guys have been busy flirting every day. We haven't even spent time doing girls' days and nights out anymore. I demand that we all go somewhere together." Coco does have a point, Blake speaks up. "Of course I do. Plus, our pre-midterm break is close so we can actually go somewhere." She raises a brow before speaking up. "Pre-midterm break? We have those. I forgot you 2 have only started going to school again recently, but yes, we can give students a week worth of prep time before exams to really get everyone in peak condition," Weiss replies before looking at Coco pointedly. "And you do realize the reason for a pre-midterm break is to study for the upcoming midterms, right?" "Yes, but that's why we have smart friends like you guys. I mean, you, Blake, Velvet, Hira and now Red. You're pretty much all we need to pass the exams anyway." Coco nods. "Wow, so, you're blatantly excluding me from the list, Adele." Yang scoffs before crossing her arms. "Rude, I thought we were comrades." "Alright then, Xiao Long, name one subject you're an A student in," Coco replied proudly, only to get a smug smile from her sister. "Actually, thanks to RWBY, all my subjects are straight A's," the blonde grins. "So, yeah, you're the only one left out." "Wared." And RWBY could only shrug her shoulders casually. Yang's really good at memorization, so she's pretty easy to teach if she's not being lazy. Also, she does all the chores around the house and all the stuff I don't want to do too, so oh. Coco puffs her cheeks as she crosses her arms, Velvet giggling at the action, giving the girl some back pats in the process. "This is unfair. I want a genius little sister who does my homework too." "Suck it, Adele." Yang laughs, giving herself a pat on the back, earning chuckles from everyone at the table. "Alright, you 2 calm down, we'll just have to be diplomatic about this. How about we hang out twice during the week?" Hira suggested. "One is us just going exploring, preferably within the first 3 days, and the other is a study session before the week ends." "Oh, that might work." Velvet clasped her hand excitedly. "What do you guys have in mind?" "We could always go shopping, that's an all-day event after all," Coco replies. "And I know Shnee's down for that." Hira and Velv are okay with it, and Blake's probably gonna spend the day reading at a nearby cafe. "Because you guys take so long." Blake answers back, "Seriously, I made that mistake once, I don't plan on doing it again, my feet were so sore after, and I just wore flats." "Well, I certainly don't mind, shopping's a passion I live for," Yang replies, though good luck making RWBY say yes. "Yang, please, I once went with you for dress shopping. You took 7 hours to pick one," she sighs at the memory. "I'm with Blake, you guys go look at clothes, we'll stay at a cafe reading or something, then you come pick us up when you're done." "That's such a waste though, I'd love to pick clothes for you, Weiss nudges her side, batting her eyes at her, but RWBY already knew that tactic. The fact that you and Yang don't get along much but practically become attached to the hip when it comes to this should be a sign for me to stay away from your Shopalooza endeavors, RWBY replies with certainty. Plus, you guys overestimate my ability to dress myself. Why do you think all I wear is just, well, shirts and jeans? I'm not good at all these clothes things. We'll be sure to remedy that soon enough, Weiss nods. Plus, if you agree to come with us willingly, I won't stop you from buying any sweets you like. You have free reign to buy anything. And that's when the white-haired girl knew that she had RWBY hooked, lined, and sunk all the way. Please, and the last plea stabbed an arrow straight to her heart. NGGHHHHH. She looks away from those blue orbs that were easily swaying her decisions. In the end she just sighs and accepted her fate. She's already spent so long away from the girl, so if Weiss wanted to dress her up even in the most ridiculous outfit, she'd probably just accept it anyway. Alright, you win, she said with a smile, and the excited giggles she got from the girl was worth it. Damn, I really thought you'd last longer than that, Wubby. Blake shook her head in mock disappointment. Have fun with them. Brows scrunched up, she looked at her sister and Yang just grins mischievously, nodding at the signal. Her sister leans towards the black-haired girl, whispering something in her ear that had Blake's eyes dilating. When Yang pulled back, she was chuckling while the other girl just stared in space. Geez, I said convince her not break her. RWBY says in disbelief. Yang just places a kiss on the girl who was still stuck staring empty-headed on the ceiling. Don't worry, she's convinced, and I just said. No. Please, spare me. I don't want to hear it. She couldn't help but look away and cover her ears. She definitely didn't want to know what her sister and probable sister-in-law have been up to in their free time. My innocent mind. Please, by those hickeys you and Ice Queen leave on each other's necks, I doubt there's any innocence left. Yang shrugs nonchalantly, leaving her and Weiss red in the face. So there were marks after all. Damn it, Yang. Aw, baby sisters growing up, remember always be protected. The blonde saying the last word so slyly had her redder than both her names combined. Must you always be this crass, Xiao Long? Weiss grits her teeth. Plus if anyone's in need of protection, it'd be you bottom. What, take that back? Yang answers indignantly, and the dragon, tiger duo were engaged in an intense answering match. RWBY just turns towards an amused Pyrrha and Velvet before sighing, really sorry about this, I don't know why they always end up like this. This earned a chuckle from the redhead. No, don't be sorry, it's nice to see how close you are. When we met them, Weiss and Blake used to be so disconnected. It took months for them to even speak to us as easily as they do with you two. Pyrrha's right, Velvet nods. It's so nice to see the school's cold beauties melt. I feel like a proud mother, though I'd like to ask, when did you and Weiss start liking each other? Even I had to admit she wasn't the easiest to get along with. Sorry Weiss, though when I got to know her she's like a prickly teddy bear. But still, you were scary, she said sheepishly towards the white-haired girl. Weiss just smiled. No, it's okay, I understand, I know I can be cold, naggy, annoying, bitchy, and her sister immediately shut on the account that Weiss had just shoved an apple in her mouth. Violently so. If it was anyone else, they might have just had to go to the ER, but Yang was just laughing at the events. I can be much, even I admit that, that's why sometimes I still find it hard to believe that my feelings were accepted and mutual. When their eyes met, RWBY couldn't help but melt. Ack, you two are so sweet, it's giving me a toothache. Coco rolls her eyes jokingly, but I do gotta admit, when did you two start liking each other? I mean, I always assumed Shnee's type would be someone older and well, mature and cooler. RWBY chuckles and scratches the back of her neck. Well, that's true, and I can't speak for Weiss, but I remember when I started liking her quite vividly in my opinion, and every time I look back at it I laugh cause it's hilarious. Whoa, wait, I haven't heard this story before. Yang says as she spits out the apple from her mouth, and I even told you about mine and Blakey's origin story. Huh, now that I think about, I don't think I've heard of this story before either, Weiss says with a pondering look, but RWBY was just grinning widely. Well, that's cause I haven't told anyone ever, wanted to keep for myself, she laughs, but I guess if you guys are really curious. RWBY couldn't help but chuckle at the 6 pairs of eyes focused on her. Well, alright then, it was just a hot summer day, and immediately she felt like she was dragged to the past. They were at Weiss' place, like they usually were these days. After all, the girl's house was huge and they had plenty of space to play and run around. Her family was nice too. Aunt Willow was doting and Winter, though strict, loved indulging them. Whitley was a pretty sweet kid too. It was like getting to experience what it'd be like to have a younger brother. Too bad he's currently at a fancy boarding school abroad. Klein was there too, the Schnee family butler, whom her, Yang and Blake called Uncle Klein. He was a good guy who always had a fresh batch of cookies every time Ruby visited. Yeah, Weiss' place was awesome even though the white-haired girl always said she liked their house better cause it was always warm and homey and she could be herself and away from expectations when they were together. But she was getting off track. They were at Weiss' backyard. She was leaning on the big, weeping willow tree that sat near the lake's embankment. Yeah, Weiss had a lake in their house, see. Right next to her was the white-haired girl herself and beside Weiss was Blake. Yang a few feet away psyching herself up. What were they doing? Well, Ruby was playing a fighting game on her handheld console, Weiss was answering a crossword puzzle on a newspaper of all things and Blake was reading a book occasionally cheering on Yang who was practicing how to land a backflip. So far, she's done nothing but fall flat on her back but if there was one thing she knew about her sister, she didn't give up. Ugh. Maybe I'm just not upping the stakes high enough? I should practice by the dock so there's a real threat. My backflipping instincts would unlock faster. Yang says with vigor, what do you think, Blakey? No, Yang don't. Blake starts but her sister already took off sprinting for the dock making the black-haired girl sigh, I'll go with her, before she falls in the water or breaks her neck, and soon it was just her and Weiss left beneath the tree. It was nice and peaceful. Ruby loved it. She loved how she didn't need to talk to fill the silence cause it was never awkward. Just her and Weiss enjoying each other's company, no words ever needed to be said. So she just focused again, happily playing her game knowing that Weiss was just next to her. She hoped that never changed for a long time. A few moments later, she hears the girl beside her grinding her teeth together, tapping her pencil furiously on the paper before sighing in annoyance. Weiss? Something wrong? You okay? She asks but Weiss just frowns further and looks at her as if she ate a really bad lemon accidentally. It's wrong, Weiss replies as she goes back to the paper. Ruby's only intelligible answer was a confused what, that had the girl groaning. The puzzle, it's wrong. That's why I couldn't get 27 down. Ugh. Seriously. Must they always ruin my fun? And Ruby just found herself staring at the frustrated girl who was running her hands through her long white hair in exasperation. Going on a tangent about the complete lack of competence executed by the newspaper publisher. How nobody would even want to read the drivel if they couldn't even bother checking it for errors before sending it out for everyone in the world to read. How she wanted to go to the printing office and slam her copy down their front desk and demand that they fix their errors or face consequences. Ruby Rose was smitten ever since. And that was it. A few moments later we rushed to where Yang and Blake were cause we heard a loud splash. She did fall into the lake but also accidentally dragged Blake with her. They dragged us too just so they wouldn't have to walk alone sopping wet and when we got back, Auntie Willow told us off for doing something so dangerous, that we could have drowned but she also gave us clothes and towels as Klein made cookies and warm milk. It was a memory she'd treasure forever. I guess that's when I knew I really liked you. When she turned to Weiss, her mouth was slightly parted in disbelief, cheeks flushed and by the gods, she hadn't even asked the girl out to be official but she already knew from way back then that Ruby loved Weiss in a more than a best friend way. She hears Velvet squealing and Pyrrha sighing in content. Coco rolled her eyes but she knew the girl well enough to know that even she found the story sweet. I knew back then that Weiss was someone I'd love to have in my life for a long time, in any capacity, though I guess I was somewhat hoping maybe Weiss would like to be with me in a romantic way, but I never got to act on it until the last moment before we left. Ruby chuckled awkwardly, rubbing the back of her neck in embarrassment. This is the sweetest story I've ever heard, Velvet giggled in glee. Ah, young love. I concur, I hope I get something as sweet as that one day, Pyrrha says, chuckling, though I have to ask, what made you choose that specific scenario? Oh, to be honest I don't quite know. Weiss was just so bright I guess. So determined and unafraid to speak her mind. She always knew when to support me or get mad at me when I've done something wrong. She was there for us through thick and thin, ready for any challenge and the way her mind worked was just so addicting in a sense. It was the opposite of how mine fired and I was hooked. She smiled, giving the reddening girl a loving look. I knew that she'd always be there to keep me on my toes, she said in earnest, hoping to convey all the affection she had for the girl. "Damn, Red, you know just what to say to get a girl to fall for you, huh?" Coco says, snickering at the heiress reaction. "Perfect 10, daughter-in-law. No kidding. How come our origin story wasn't as sweet as that, Blakey?" Yang says, poking Blake's side. Earning a laugh and a flick on the forehead from the girl. "That's cause you were so oblivious back then that you didn't even understand all the cues I gave you." Blake shakes her head, chuckling. "You only got it when I kissed you on the lips and spelled it out for you, literally. Who would have thought that Red would be the smoother one of the two? I initially assumed it'd be Goldie because of that bad boy with a heart of gold thing she got going on," Coco says in thought. "Guess I got you wrong." "Please, it's not my fault." Blake turns my brain to mush. "Actually no, that statement accurate. I thought you and Red would be these cool, playboy types. When you arrived at school, you strung people so easily and rode motorcycles like badasses, only to find out you two were just glorified dorks." Coco snorts. "Cool on the outside, but dorks on the in. I respect that, thanks for telling us, Red." When she felt Weiss' hands intertwining her own, giving her soft looks of adoration, there was no place she'd rather be. "Wow, look, it's dark already," Velvet says as they focused on the outside. She was right, the street lamps were open and it was already 7:15. "Huh, you're right, shall we finalize our plans before we go home then?" Hira asks, making them all nod. "So we'll hang out within the first 3 days of break, then on the second to the last day, we have a study sleepover. Whose house do we choose though?" "Weiss and I don't mind, but, since we always hang out at our place." "Well, mine and Ruby's place is plenty spacious and you guys haven't been there yet. We'll get everything set up so you guys are free to visit," Yang says, beaming. Hira nods with a smile and claps her hand in glee. "Great. Oh, this'll be fun. Oh, I can't wait." Nodding at their plans, they each went their separate ways, Coco going with Hira and Velvet to get them home safely and the four of them heading to Weiss and Blake's apartment before heading back home. It wasn't a far walk, just enough to enjoy good conversation. Blake and Yang were talking amongst themselves with hushed whispers, walking ahead of her and Weiss, but Ruby didn't mind. She'd hardly mind anything if Weiss was with her through anything. Their hands still intertwined, swinging alongside them as they walked. And that's when she realized something: they were alone. They were walking hand in hand and the atmosphere was perfect. This was it? She could ask now. But Weiss barely said anything since they'd left the diner. Did she somehow make Weiss uncomfortable in the process of telling her when she'd exactly fallen for her, though she hasn't said it in those exact words just yet? Unable to hold off the quiet, she couldn't help but ask, "Hey Weiss, are you okay? Was that too much?" Then the shorter girl just stopped before looking at her straight in the eyes, the other hand placed on her cheek, brushing it softly with her thumb. Weiss stands up to her tiptoes and plants a sweet kiss on the tip of her nose before pulling away, blushing. God, she loved this girl, and one day soon, she'd tell her and shower her with so much affection that her current way of showing it would seem so inadequate. "No, that wasn't too much, never too much, you were perfect," she said so softly Ruby couldn't help but lean closer and place a kiss on the girl's forehead. She stayed like that for a while, just taking in everything that was Weiss. How she smelled like minty lavender, driving Ruby's veins wild. How her soft and silky hair was something she loved running her fingers through. How this girl was perfect in every way for Ruby. Then before she noticed it, her mouth was already sprinting ahead. "Would you like to go on date with me? The one I promised? I'm sorry it took so long to ask." And Weiss just chuckles, getting closer and closer until she feels arms wrap around her waist, nuzzling the crook of her neck in the middle of the sidewalk. "I'm fine with waiting, and I'd love to go with you every single time, no matter where and when. You have me always, Ruby Rose." As of that moment, if smiles could generate electricity, she was confident she could power Vale City in its entirety. Chapter 12, A Fiery Shopping Spree. Her eyes were on the verge of rolling to the back of her head. Coincidentally, Blake was having a similar dilemma. It was the second day of the pre-midterm break when they agreed to meet up at an early 10 in the morning. So far, with the exception of Blake and her, the girls have been on a non-stop shopping spree. And despite the numerous bags they've all accumulated, their eyes still look so hungry, for clothes, shoes, bags and God knows what. Ruby on the other hand was hungry for something else. She'd literally kill a bunch of evil henchmen for something cold and sweet right about now, like ice cream, or Weiss. Weiss cream. That sounded so wrong. Don't judge her. It was noon and she was starving. And so far there has been no food since this began. It would have been manageable if Yang said I could bring a book. Why did it have to be shopping? Blake clicked her tongue, leaning back on the bench, letting her head fall backwards, like how Ruby was sitting at the moment. This is it, YuliArd, I'm done, I'm gone, I'm dead. No, she groans, forcing her head to tilt towards Blake's direction. Don't leave me, I can't do this without you YuliArd. You have to be strong. For me, for the future, for the kingdom we've been promised. The black-haired girl clutched her chest. You have to avenge me. But, my liege, I don't. Ruby shut her eyes, holding back tears. I don't have the strength to do so. No, my squire, you have all you need. With the knowledge and strength you've acquiesced. Blake placed a hand on her left shoulder, with a determined expression set on her face. I have your loyalty as you have mine. Succeed, my squire. My liege. My squire. Are you dorks doing dramatic readings of your books again? A voice interrupts their heartfelt rendition, and when Blake and her turned around, Weiss had her arms crossed, brow raised, staring at them with an amused smile on her face. We wouldn't be if you'd allowed us to bring something that would keep us busy. Blake puffed her cheeks, pouting. Ruby just smiles and nods her head in agreement. Yeah. And it wasn't from a book. It was from a B-rated movie with some surprisingly nice twists on the fantasy genre. Blake finished and the two of them shared a high five. It was so nice to have another sister she could do these things with, cause Yang would always choose to watch something on TV that was either some type of sports or a bad soap opera. She got hooked after the first time she watched them way back when they were locked up in the shack by the beach in Brazil, though Yang would never admit it. And don't say it's the same as a book anyway, she interjects, no movie is ever the same as the book. You two are absolute dorks, and I've been sent here to take you to the shop we were at. I think we're gonna need some help with carrying some stuff, Weiss says casually before turning around and walking away, leaving her and Blake to follow her with a lot of questions in their minds. Holy, their mouths dropped in horror as the white-haired girl led them to this fashionable and chic-looking shop that had far too many things in pastel for her to not think about strawberry-flavored macarons. Bags upon bags filled the shop's lobby area as Pira chatted with a clerk, leaving Yang, Coco, and Velvet looking around, even if Velvet herself looked a bit more lost than the first two. From tops, to pants, to some shoes and purses. They inspected everything with a keen eye, matching everything accordingly before putting everything in a neat pile and asking the clerk if they could try it out. Then if they liked it, they would pile it neatly and pay for it. If it didn't, it was going back to the shelves. And they did it so fast. Ruby thought her reaction times whenever she was on missions were quick. Well, clearly she was mistaken. She just hadn't seen a bunch of shopping addicts go through their drug shopping. For a moment, she silently tried to turn around with Blake's eyes flicking over to her in understanding. They were still close to the door, they could make it, just quietly, avoid the shoppers, don't stare them in the eye, don't let them know you fear them, they can smell your weakness. A hand yanks the back of her shirt's neck, dragging her back. With a swift turn, she was once again facing Weiss, but this time, it was clear she wasn't amused by what Ruby had planned to execute. Hey, what's up girl, she chuckles awkwardly, rubbing the back of her neck forcing a tight smile, you're looking real pretty this morning. Thank you, Weiss replies, sounding satisfied, but it wasn't enough. Ruby knew she wasn't getting out of this, especially when she pulled out a card Weiss had never used before. The guild card. But you've said so earlier when we first saw each other, and again to get out of the first and second shop. I feel like you're just saying it now to get away from doing this. She looked so hurt, those blue orbs glistening with, definitely fake, tears. But Ruby took the bait like an idiot. Do you not like spending time with me? The tone, the looks, the soft lips pouting. Damn, she was good. She knew it was all an act, but it pulled her heartstrings like a fiddler playing a fiddle. Was that even a thing? She didn't know anything at this point besides the fact that Weiss made her stupid. She was so beautiful, Ruby would always be left grasping her wits. She just sighs and gives a resigned smile. Even if it was fake, she'd never want to make Weiss sad. She'd gladly be the idiot every single time if it meant getting the beautiful girl in front of her to smile. All right, I give. She raises her arms up in surrender, and the self-satisfied, proud smirk the girl gave her was so worth it. So what did you need, other than carry this mountain of goods? "Are you guys planning on starting your own store or something?" she asks exasperatedly, making the white-haired girl chuckle. "Well, what can I say, I enjoy it. Now come here, I have some things I want you to try." "Endure it. Endure it," Ruby rose. "For the girl you love. You'd be willing to wear frilly dresses or whatever Weiss had planned for her to dress up." When she turned around, she noticed that Blake wasn't behind anymore. But before she could ask if she had managed to escape, she sees her being pushed inside a changing room by Yang and Coco with a pile of clothes that covered her upper body. "So long, my liege," she mentally saluted the girl's brave sacrifice. A fate she would be joining soon from the looks of it. "Here you go." Weiss plops a menagerie of pinks, baby blues, reds, yellows and other colors that probably have specific names that she knew nothing about on her arms and led her to another changing room. Well, if even her liege had to bow down to her queen, what was a squire to do but do the same? Today was the day Ruby learned that despite her being a secret agent, who shot bad guys, stopped nuclear weapons and saved the world once officially, she'd never be able to execute the same level of flawlessness on the art of shopping as these girls did. She'd leave that to Weiss, who was enjoying every bit of her trying on a baby pink frilly sundress. She tried on about 25 different things in the macaron-looking shop. Maybe around 32 stuff from another shop, 16 in the next and 23 in the last one they've been in. A whopping 96 articles of various clothing, spanned in 4 shops they visited in under an hour. She was glad Weiss and everyone, Blake and her excluded, were enjoying, but she was so ready for bed. A soft bed, or in her case, still the couch, cause she still hasn't slept in her room. She realized now that sharing sleep quarters with her sister made her so unprepared to sleep alone in a huge room, so they've both been sleeping in the living room couches to keep some semblance of their old lives in their still fairly new routine as students, but she was getting off track. Point was, Ruby was hungry, tired, and ready for a nap. "Maybe we should get some rest," Velvet says as she stares at Ruby and Blake's pale faces with a mixture of amusement and pity. "Must rest. Feet," Blake's mumbles, repeating the words hollowly like a broken record. Ruby on the other hand just kept looking around for places to get a snack. Why would a fashion district with a lot of clothing shops and customers not have any food carts? Seriously. They're missing out on possible patrons here. Sniffing the air for any sign of fried food or something obnoxiously sweet. So far it was just expensive smelling perfumed air and disappointment. The 5 girls shared a look as they stared at the most introverted pair of the group. "Yeah, we should probably let them recuperate," Hira giggles. "And get something Ruby can munch on, your girl's been sniffing around like a hound dog." Yang guffaws, placing an arm around Weiss, who just sighed. "I did say she could get any sweets she wanted, without any repercussions," Weiss replies, tilting her head, thinking of every possible way this could blow up in her face. "Well, if it's good food and an amazing selection of ice-cold, sweet desserts, I know just the place," Coco smirks. "Just get your wallet ready." Knowing Red, she'd probably get the biggest thing on the menu. "Damn it, Coco," Weiss says, glaring at the short-haired girl who was just laughing at the turn of events. They had opted to take lunch in this ice cream parlor restaurant MASH that just so happened to have an issued challenge to its customer base. It was to eat this sugary, carb monster. All 40 scoops of their flavors in a giant container, along with an ungodly amount of syrup, sprinkles, chocolate pieces, cookies, a giant slice of cake, whipped cream, fruits, and a candied cherry on top. Finish it in an hour and it's free with a secret prize. If not, well, Weiss' wallet wouldn't be complaining either way. The only thing that wanted to complain was her and her wanting to nag at the girl who was shoving literal scoops of ice cream in her mouth with a spoon much too big for it, moaning at every bite of the dessert she got. So Weiss was stuck amidst this limbo of trying not to be anything remotely close to aroused and stopping herself from getting mad at the girl whose silver eyes were practically shining as she ate the sugary monstrosity. And to think Weiss thought the donut holes were bad. Blake on the other hand was enjoying a seafood platter with glee, biting down on the fancy tuna sashimi with equal gusto as the girl devouring the diabetes-inducing cup with reckless abandon. "Aren't you glad to see your Romeolette this happy?" Coco smirks as she watches the girl eat in abject horror. Was this what Ruby felt like when she went inside those clothing shops for her? "I said food, not chronic illness on a platter." She nearly slammed her hands on the table to make a point, but then stopped as she looked away from the girl, who moaned again as she shoved yet another scoop of ice cream in her mouth. "Yeah, you'd like some of that cream or be the cream at, Shni?" Coco's shit-eating grin threatened to make a vein pop on her head. Seriously, she was going to have an aneurysm one day because of either Coco's antics and RWBY being unintentionally sexy. At least one was a great way to go. Hira and Velvet also couldn't help but stare at the very happy girl in concern. Heck, even Yang was looking at the girl with worry. "I'm definitely gonna have to quadruple your workout load, Rubes," Yang says in disbelief before shoving a forkful of pasta Alfredo in her mouth. Cool, worth it," was the only thing she heard from RWBY. Well, she said more, but then Weiss' eyes focused on the girl's lips, which she licked before picking up a napkin to wipe it properly, and she practically blacked out. See? Unintentionally sexy. Making her head turn into a soupy mush. Whether it be RWBY unconsciously flexing her toned everything or unwittingly sending her the smoothest line she'd ever heard with the most earnest and sincere expressions. She was always unintentionally sexy. Has she gushed about the fact RWBY cooking was the hottest thing she'd seen? Well, now she has, and she was getting way off track. Damn it, RWBY. The rest of the late lunch was filled with talking about which clothes would work best with an outfit. Then it changed to plans for the rest of the break before they went back to studying and what they'd be bringing at the sisters' place for their sleepover. Well, for the 5 of them at least. Blake and RWBY barely spoke the entire time, just quietly enjoying their meals, or in RWBY's case, a saccharine atrocity. Guess the morning really did take a lot out of them. She almost felt bad, well, she did, for Blake. RWBY eating this dental war crime was more than enough payment, and she knew the dark-hair red-tipped girl agreed with the sentiment. RWBY had finished it in about half the time needed to complete it, looking smug and still managing to eat her burger and fries along with a giant glass of blue lemonade. It made her envious of her ability to just keep eating and never gain any weight. Weiss would probably still love RWBY even if she did gain some, but what girl didn't want the ability to devour everything without consequence, like that one pink blob with the arms and legs RWBY had once showed her, the one who sucks everything up and wasn't affected by it? Marby. Larby. Carby. Definitely feels like a carby though, but she digressed. In the end, RWBY was the first who won the challenge and got a year's worth of ice cream supply for free that she could get anytime she came here, with a personalized card that says, "World's Best Ice Cream Eater," and a shirt with the restaurant's logo in front that had the girl acting smug until they managed to finish the meal and leave the place, but RWBY's face was getting paler by the moment. "Never thought I'd be this weak to that much ice cream," she clutches her stomach and covers her mouth as she was about to start dry heaving, slowing her walking by a lot. Weiss stayed near the girl as she offered her support, but RWBY insisted she'd just come find them after. Then a man with orange hair, tucked beneath a fedora of all things covering one side of his face, passed her and bumped into RWBY, who was just behind. He said something Weiss had assumed to be an apology before moving quickly, and the dark-haired red-tipped girl just stared as he walked away. It took a solid minute of RWBY just staring at the direction the man disappeared into, so she just called for her attention. "RWBY, we have to go. Coco and Yang probably emptied the stores by now," she jested, but when the girl turned towards her, her expression was something Weiss had never seen before. It disappeared quickly, so she was left unsure of whether what she was real or not. It looked scary. Just that brief flash had her spine shivering. Her usual bright, shining silver eyes were dulled, her face set in harsh lines as if she herself was anticipating something horrible to happen, and she was cold, so cold. Which was the oddest part, because RWBY was practically synonymous with warmth for her, like a light summer breeze capable of making you feel all the good feelings, or a warm broth when you're cold on a rainy day. But in a flash it was RWBY just smiling at her, somewhat forced, still clutching her stomach and holding her mouth with her hand. Weiss walked closer and placed a hand on her cheek, caressing it ever so softly. "You okay? Did that man hurt you?" She furrowed her brows, but she felt a feather-light kiss placed between them. As always, RWBY's kisses never fail to make her ever so breathless. No, he just reminded me of something. Fedoras, you know, somehow they look so classy, dorky, and intimidating at the same time. Depends on who wears it, I guess." RWBY chuckles before taking some of the bags on Weiss' hand. "Shall we?" "Okay, if you're sure you're better." Weiss gave her a small smile as RWBY kissed her cheek again. Together they walked to where their friends were, but the white-haired girl still had a couple of burning questions in her mind about. Starting with her wondering if what she even saw was real. "Be careful, girlie, wouldn't want you getting hurt," the man whispered as he bumped into her, their eyes briefly clashing. The man stood out from all the rest of the people within the shopping district. With his orange hair swept to cover one side of his face, a long white trench coat with red accents with a black fedora with a red band around it. He was an oddity, and the way he talked to her irked Ruby somehow. As if he knew who she really was. The one green eye staring into her soul for an achingly long second. There was maliciousness behind them, and she didn't like it one bit. She apologized still despite him being the one to bump into her, and he just gave her a seemingly pleasant smile before walking away and never looking back. Something was way off about this guy, and if Weiss wasn't there, she'd probably be tailing him right now. But when the white-haired girl's hand was placed on her cheek, she took a deep breath and exhaled. Maybe she was just overthinking it. That worried look on Weiss' face was enough to calm her down. Yeah, that's right. She's not even supposed to be thinking of these things. She was on provision. This was technically a forced vacation. If she tailed every shady guy in the city, she'd get so old and there would still be a lot of them. Are you okay? Did that man hurt you? Weiss asked, and she melted. No, he just reminded me of something. Fedoras, you know, somehow they look so classy, dorky, and intimidating at the same time. Depends on who wears it, I guess. That's right, she was just a normal kid for at least a year and a half. What happens after that? Well, she wasn't sure yet, but she was going to enjoy her time with the white-haired girl as much as possible. So she feigns discomfort, chuckling before taking some bags from Weiss' hands. Shall we? There was a brief look of worry flashing in those blue orbs. Okay, if you're sure you're better. The girl smiles ever so slightly. Ruby couldn't stop herself from kissing those rosy cheeks. They walked, and soon they managed to catch up with their friends. Coco asking where they were and what took them so long, and some innuendo about changing spit or something. But she was far too out of it to be embarrassed like the white-haired girl beside her. The others laughed at the pair's banter, but Yang saw her contemplative look. With a tilt of her head, her sister's lilac eyes conversed with her own. You okay? She just shook her head to ease her sister's worries. Yeah, just. I'll tell you later. With one small nod, Yang's face turned back to normal, smiling at the group's antics, but Ruby still felt weird. Since the man bumped into her, her instincts went into high gear. She'd been trying to ease her breathing, but nothing was working. It was like those few seconds before an enemy started firing at her. Her body going into mission mode. Adrenaline firing at her synapses, like her gun shooting bullets at every single foe she would face. But it also felt like a battle had started, but Ruby remained clueless. So she was stuck in a limbo of anticipation for the worst or calming her nerves down. Turns out, despite her not working for the past 2 months, her honed instincts remained sharp as ever. Because just a few moments from this conversation, horrified screams would erupt and fill the place with a sense of foreboding and panic. What's going on? She hears Blake ask, but Yang and her were already running towards where the sounds of trepidation originated. Just a few turns away was a 7th-floor building, with rising flames. Strong, fierce, blazing embers engulfed the inside, making. The heat was so intense it was making her sweat. People within the structure running out in agitation. Holy crap, she hears Coco mutter from behind them as the group of girls they've left behind manages to catch up. But her attention focuses on a wailing mother who was trying to fight her way in, only to be held back by a pair of men. My daughter. Please. She's still up in the 5th, room 13. Let me go, please. And all of a sudden her heart was tugged, her senses overcome with the will to do the right thing and something equally, really stupid. She didn't cuss that often, but fuck. She was really gonna do this. Charge inside a burning building. It's not like it was anything new. She'd been in one before and managed to get out with just a couple of first-degree burns and singed eyebrows, but it was a horrible experience through and through. This was going to be the dumbest thing she'd ever do. Curse that stupid, probably inherited hero complex. She quickly tied her short hair into a half ponytail and turned to see her sister already looking at her with a horrified expression. No, Yang said firmly, you are not doing this, and Ruby's eyes just flickered towards the crying and inconsolable mother, Yang's eyes following before gritting her teeth and looking away. I can get in and out through the fire escapes and the balconies. You of all people know how quick I am on my feet. I'll get the kid before the fire brigade comes. It'll be in and out, she reasoned, steadying her breath. From behind Yang, her friends were looking at her varying degrees of horror, Weiss especially. Then another explosion broke out from the 1st floor of the building and the wailing got louder. Yang grabs a handkerchief from her pocket before grabbing a water bottle from one of the bags, drenching it and tossing it towards her, where she caught it with ease. Tying the wet cloth around her head to cover her nose and mouth, she grabs the bottle and tosses the remaining amount of water on her head before turning around. "We'll get help, please, don't die," her sister, eyes fully conveying a clear message. "Don't die or I'ma kill you," it said before pushing her back onwards. She could hear Weiss screaming for her. "Don't look back. Don't lose nerve. The mission comes first." On the alley beside of the building, she quickly jumps on top of the covered dumpster, followed by a tic-tac off the wall, and jumps at the last step to grab the fire escape's ladder. Her legs spurring her further and further each second. 513 was it? Once again she was thankful she made a living off listening to conversations she wasn't supposed to hear. "Well, she'll be there faster than you could say," the quick red girl doing something stupid, and aha! An open balcony to enter. Without thinking, she entered and was immediately met with heat so strong she felt like she was in an oven. Well, technically, she might as well have been. Her eyes stung from the smoke and she really had to hurry cause it was getting harder to breathe. The place looked like it would fall apart at any time, so Ruby just used her arm to cover half her face as she sprinted, checking every door for the right one. She found the one she needed at the end of the right hall. She needed to hurry, that fire looked like it was rushing to devour her flesh and char her to bits. Ruby hurriedly tried to open the door with the knob, but like all missions, there would always be a snag in every plan. It was locked as all hell. Shit. She didn't have time to pick the damn lock. But the door next to it wasn't. Plus, this would at least make sure the kids stayed safe inside while the fire tried to burn down the rest. She makes a mad dash for the apartment next to it, formulating her best route to execute this plan. As soon as she got in, she quickly made her way for the room's balcony. Oh, that was a pretty high drop. Not enough to kill if she didn't land on her head, but if she landed wrong she'd at the very least definitely shatter her legs or something. She sees her friends down below, but she couldn't focus on their expressions right now. She braced herself and ran, vaulting over the railings with a Kong jump, landing on the neighboring room with a roll. Luckily, this at least didn't have a locked balcony. Once she entered the room, the place was already quickly being filled by heavy smoke, and she found the little girl who looked no older than 6 or 7 passed out by her toys. Immediately Ruby went to grab her. But when she placed her hand on her back, she felt something crinkle against her hand. She leans the girl onto her as Ruby pulls a piece of paper pinned on the girl's back. It was an insignia, a circular pin with a black outer rim and all white paint inside with a single eye painted in the middle. When she took the paper, however, she felt dread seep into her bones. It was a note with only 5 words written on it. "Nice to meet you, girly." She didn't have time to process the hundreds of thoughts running through her head right now, because the moment after she read it, she heard a loud hiss amidst the cackling flames and the smell of gasoline quickly filling her lungs. Fuck. She grabs the girl and places the pin inside her pocket before dashing for the balcony. Immediately Yang spots her along with the girl, but for the first time ever, she doesn't know what to do. Her usual calm demeanor was overcome by panic because of what she'd read. "Ruby." Yang calls from below, pulling her out from her bad thoughts. "Breathe, that's right, breathe and do what you do best. Think your way through this." "Yang. Gas leak. No exits," she screams back, and she sees her sister scramble around from down below. Then both their eyes landed on the box truck just beside the building that hasn't been moved. Immediately they had the same idea. Sometimes the dumbest ideas worked, and this had to, or Ruby's spine would probably be fragmented beyond repair. Yang quickly sprints, jumping on the hood of the truck and climbing up until she was on top of the box itself. Yang readies herself before running the fastest she'd ever run. Then Ruby jumped back first, holding the child securely. She didn't have to worry though, because she knew Yang always had her back. This time, both figuratively and literally. It happened so quickly, yet everything slowed down for her. She saw her sister's outstretched arms as she jumped off the top of the truck, then not a moment too soon, she was tackling her in mid-air, sending them both flying ahead. But as always, her sister with her knack for arriving with style came in handy, cause she landed on the pavement, feet placed firmly on the ground, carrying both her and the child in both her arms. Literally a few seconds later, the last 3 floors of the buildings, yes, including the one they were on, exploded, and both her and Yang just stared at the building as they breathed hard. When she managed to relax her nerves, Yang put her down and placed both her hands on Ruby's shoulders. In and out. In and out, they took in the gulps of air greedily before Ruby somewhat calmed. It was just her and Yang. It was safe. It was safe. "Ease up, Agent," she told herself before meeting her sister's eyes. You okay? Yang starts, voice quiet. And RWBY just nodded slowly, inspecting herself. Yeah, I think so, thanks for the save, by the way. Always. Are you sure you're alright? 100% sure. Then she nodded again with more assurance. Yeah, I'm okay. Good. Good. Then Yang's grip on her shoulders tightened, making her wince. Then what the hell were you thinking, you knucklehead? She couldn't quite answer the question, especially when the child's mother came closer, pushing through the crowd that were watching them, already crying. RWBY placed the girl carefully in her arms, and the mother cried even more when she told her that the girl was still alive, just probably passed out from the lack of oxygen. She pulled both her and Yang into a tight hug, thanking them profusely, and they just shared a look and smiled. Then the emergency people arrived, way too fucking late in her opinion, tended to everyone who was wounded. RWBY herself had to get checked after going in. Yang practically shoved an oxygen mask in her face as she breathed in all the sweet, non-smoky air. Then as she was sitting on the back of the ambulance being told off by the head of the fire people, telling her all the dangerous things she did in that span, she bit her tongue, not wanting to answer back anymore. These guys haven't even lived through half the dangerous shit she'd done since she was 9. But at the end of the lecture, the fireman tipped his hard hat and told her a genuine thank you for saving the girl when they couldn't. One of the weirdest things she'd ever heard in RWBY's opinion. Ojban told them back then that they were just shadows, protecting the world in secret, never getting the recognition any of them deserved, but they did it because it was the right thing to do. So getting thanked for something she'd done that essentially saved a person's life was both rewarding and weird. When the man walked away, she sighed, grabbing the pin from her pocket to inspect it again. She didn't like where this was going. Maybe it was time to ask their contacts back at HQ about what was really happening. She sees a group of girls from her peripherals and she immediately puts the pin back, placing it in her pocket so they wouldn't see it. She gives them a forced smile, but the glare from the white-haired girl immediately makes her head bow down, unable to fully meet Weiss' icy gaze. But then she feels arms wrap around her as the smaller girl pulls her closer and closer in a well-secured embrace. She could hear the silent sobbing and sniffles. RWBY could only hug the girl back just as tight, making circles on the girl's back to calm her down. The others, though, had similar expressions of worry mixed with relief that they still managed to find her alive after the stunt she pulled. Yang was holding Blake, the black-haired girl's eyes set in a concern mimicking Yang's disapproving frown, both leaning on each other for support. Hira was giving her a weak smile. Velvet's eyes were tinged with worry, and Coco had the same expression. "Don't do that again," Weiss whimpers, burying her face on the crook of her neck. "Don't you ever do that again, you insufferable dolt." She could only gulp and nod, knowing she could never fully promise that to the white-haired girl. Not when they were agents. Not when they still had enemies at large. For now this was all she could do. Hold the people she cared about closely and do her best to protect them through it, despite all the pain it'll bring her in the long run. "Are you sure this was wise?" A man speaks through the burner phone. "We've been told to observe, not to make contact." The orange-haired man just sits back on the various containers of weapons that were going to make the world submit to them, or so the League claims. For him, he didn't really care about world domination, just whoever was the highest bidder that would set him up for life. For now it was this league of douchebags, but if there was someone willing to pay more for his services, well, he'd always had a flexible way of living. "Please, it's not like I kidnapped the lass or hurt her, I just sent her a little acquaintance note, nothing too big." He smiles, as he lights up a cigar and inhales the delicious nicotine. "Just a little getting to know card. You worry too much, doctor." "Umph, let's see how flamboyant you'll be once the bitch hears about this," the voice scoffs. "The fact that you call her names behind her back is already proof you won't tell on me. Besides, both of us are both in it for the same thing anyway." "Umph. May your arrogance be your downfall, Torchwick," the voice says before cutting the call. He just smiles as he inhales another lungful of smoke. "Such a funny guy," he chuckles, looking at the hundreds of crates filled with enough weapons for armies. "The biggest bidder, huh, for now anyway." He'd stay for that cold hard cash and the absolute joy he feels every time innocent people scream for help. He'd watch the world be leveled to dust as he sips pina coladas somewhere on a private island as the planet welcomes a new age. Not a bad endpoint after all of this. He smirks. Roman Torchwick couldn't wait for retirement. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.